Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson, and this week we return to mythic Cheshire for a saga seed based on the Wizard of Alderley Edge. When you open a book of Cheshire folklore, Alderley Edge immediately looms. It's like Sherwood in Nottingham folklore. Time for us to face it. Here's a version of the core story, shortened down dramatically. There was a farmer headed to a market in Macclesfield to sell a fine white mare. As he passed Thieves' Hole on Alderley Edge, he was stopped by a man in a robe. He offered a price for the horse, but the farmer thought he could get a better price at the market, and the robe man said he wouldn't, and that he'd see him on the way back. He was proven right. It was a busy market, but the farmer just couldn't land a buyer for his horse. On the way home, the man again appeared and offered him his price. The farmer accepted, and the man led him to an open set of iron gates leading into a cave. Inside, he told the farmer to take a fair fee from the piles of gold lying around. In the middle of the cave were knights and horses fully armoured and sleeping. The wizard explained that he was one horse short as he led the mare away. The man left with pockets of gold and told all of his friends, and they scoured the area but were unable to find the cave. Sometimes people still see the wizard in the distance. To examine, England has a vast number of sleeping warrior sites. They aren't all King Arthur, although he does get top billing. These armies are often said to be waiting for England's darkest hour, but given the horrible things that have happened, the foretold time must be pretty dire. Some writers say he's waiting for an invasion and that England hasn't been invaded since 1066, but that's just not true. It's just not been conquered successfully. The Scots regularly pop over the border, wreck the countryside, and drive off the cattle. Prince Louis of France landed with an army in 1216. None of the sleepers woke up to do anything useful in the real world, that is. In your campaign, 1216 might have been a heck of a year for guys in crowns waking up under barrows and killing the French. Could guardianship of the sleepers be an inherited duty? The player characters, instead of hunting for the buried Arthur, see my Cornwall book, are in charge of dusting him occasionally and working out where the horses keep disappearing to. The common claim that the Wizard of Alderley Edge is Merlin is difficult to reconcile with the idea that Nimue trapped him in a thorn bush or in a crystal cave. There are some stories that put Thomas the Rhymer under a mountain with a sleeping king. Thomas's tendency to leave prophecies around the place could be useful as a sug hook. The characters are storing up warriors and material to defend mythic Europe, or at least this part of it, from a terrible, distant but inevitable threat. The Guardians of the Sleepers could be a mystery cult that supports the coming of the Mabdarogan, who is a sort of Welsh messiah, whose name I have just mispronounced. I'm sorry to the Welsh speakers. The kings of England took a couple of bites at claiming they were the great Welsh, later English, Messiah, by naming their kids Arthur. Princes named Arthur seem unlucky though, so the royal house abandoned it as a primary name. Arthur of Normandy gets murdered by his guardians to the advantage of his uncle, Richard the Lionheart. Arthur Tudor dies before taking the English crown, so his wife, Catherine of Aragon, is handed over to Arthur's brother, Henry VIII. You'll notice they stopped calling their heirs Arthur after this. Partially this is because the monarchy started using names in tightly repeated patterns, so tight that whenever anyone broke from it, like Queen Victoria's parents, who were criticised for giving her such a German name, the pattern reasserts itself quite quickly. Even the current king, Charles III, claimed for a while that his regnal name would be George. Enough of this diversion. The main source I'm using for this is Cheshire Ghosts and Legends by Frederick Woods. Woods now makes a leap that I can't quite follow, but here's the patch I can put on it to keep the game adaptation going. The prophecy that says these forces will be necessary came from the oracular head of Bran the Blessed. Bran's head was the mystical defender of England until King Arthur disinterred him. Arthur claimed that only his arms should defend the kingdom. In the Welsh triads, this is commemorated as one of the three tragic uncoverings, as it destroyed the magical defences maintained by the head, which prevented the Saxon invasion. The head may, we suggest, in-game, have known Arthur was going to wreck this first plan and set up the mystery cult with this cache as a second line of defence. It's hard for me to go on here because, being a gamer of a certain age, I was around when every game wanted to use the Cult of the Head, and suddenly the place was filled with broody guys in trench coats that concealed katanas. I believe White Wolf wanted a certain amount of this in the Scotland book. Moving on. It does give us some interesting options. The simplest way to design the magic of a Cult of the Head is to allow the head taker to use one of the virtues of the victim whose head they have taken. So Cult of the Head magic is essentially a stronger version of the mask magic in Mythic Venice. Did you see that plug? That's how you can tell I'm a professional. It gives us the beheading game from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight as an initiation ordeal. Also the green sash that Gawain wears after his successful completion of the quest came a mark of investiture for the Knights of the Round Table, so we have the beginning of occultic iconography. The sashes worn by the hoplites might be related in the game world. I made up the sashes for hoplites in Sanctuary of Ice, I believe, and I knew I was pinching Gawain's sash. I don't know I have enough material to design this mystery cult just yet. I'm going to continue researching in the hope that folklore will indicate to me which virtues and flaws are more suitable. Your saga may vary.